Hello good people, this is Sam here at She Does the Most, and today we are not doing a plan with me. We are actually executing a plan from my planner, and we will be making gingerbread pinecone cookies. So I am starting off with this recipe book that I literally only have 3 recipes in, and I don't know where I got this gingerbread cookie recipe from, but if you would like it, you can pause the video and look at the recipe. So I am starting off with 1 cup of Kerrygold butter. I feel like in cookies you can really taste a difference, so I try to use a really good butter. I am adding 1 cup of granulated sugar, and I have to add a cup of molasses, but I saw this really cool trick where if you have to measure out something that's really sticky like honey, that you just spray it with some cooking spray, and it will slip right out once you add it in. So you want to make sure that you always scrape down your mixer, scrape down the paddle, but also the bottom of your KitchenAid bowl. It has a raised part in the middle, and I find that things really get caught down there. So I am just scraping down the sides, the bottom, and the whisk attachment intermittently. Next, I add 1 large egg, along with baking soda, salt, ground ginger, ground cinnamon, and ground cloves. I am changing to the paddle attachment because this is going to get really thick and the whisk attachment isn't going to be able to handle it. And so I am just going to incorporate the flour slowly over probably about 5 batches. So maybe you want to do 1 cup at a time because this is 5 cups of flour. This makes a lot of cookie dough. This is not one that you will need to double because it makes more than enough. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my plan with me, but these cookies that I'm going to be making are going to be part of a cookie box that I assemble and give away to various people in the month of December. I will be giving them to my community of care. I know my daughter's pediatrician loves getting cookie boxes, maybe some teachers, things like that. So a small amount will be left over at the end of December for us to have for Christmas, but most of this will be given away. So once all the flour is incorporated and this is done mixing, I will divide it into 2 sections and wrap them in plastic wrap to refrigerate for at least 30 minutes. I end up refrigerating it overnight and continue with it the next day. So I pick this back up the next day, and this is my first time using a wooden cookie cutter, if that's what you call it, cookie press, whatever it is. And I purchased this one from Amazon, and when I saw it, I thought it was gorgeous, and I was so excited to make pine cone shaped cookies and have frosted powdered sugar on top. And I will let you know that working with this cookie mold was the most challenging thing ever. And the first cookie turned out horribly. And I will actually have a section at the end of the video where I show everything that goes wrong. But I'm just going to have this run straight through, and show the successful aspects of it before we get to everything that went wrong. So I learned that it needed a significantly lot more flour. So I added a lot more flour, and after so many attempts, this was definitely not the first, I was able to get one that came out successfully. So I just have my baking sheet over there on the side, and I will just stamp them out and transfer. As you can see, that one broke apart, so I just attempted again. My first 8 attempts were a lot more tragic than that, but this was just a small fluke, and they are coming out. Whether it is great or as I expected, at this point, I was just happy that something was coming out. I did notice that the flour was kind of getting caked up into the grooves, and you weren't getting as much definition on the cookies. So I just used a metal chopstick to kind of work some of that flour out. But you have to keep this thing heavily floured in order to get your dough out. And it could be just that I'm not using the right type of recipe for this mold. I have made this gingerbread recipe a bunch of times, and it's just with a traditional gingerbread man cutout, and it's been successful. But possibly I needed to use something different. The cookies do bake up and look quite gorgeous. It's really what I expected. The only thing I didn't anticipate is because I needed so much flour for my cookies not to stick. Even afterwards, I have a pastry brush and I was brushing off the cookies after they baked, and the flour residue was still left on there. So it wasn't as bad because I do plan on adding powdered sugar to them before I assemble them in my cookie boxes. And I did sample some, and it doesn't taste very floury, but just for the look of it, this would probably be better with a lighter cookie, or possibly just a different recipe of gingerbread cookie. So I go ahead and bake these up at 375. The recipe says for 8 to 12 minutes. I think 8 is that perfect time. You don't want to overcook these. They do puff up slightly, but they hold their shape really well. At this point, I am taking out my second portion of the gingerbread cookie, and I refuse. I'm now moving on, I don't know, day 3 of trying to use that wooden mold, and I am just over it. So I purchased this new cookie cutter this year, and this seems to be the theme of these gingerbread cookies, and it hasn't worked out for me that I'm using new cutters and new molds. But this one I purchased from Etsy, and it says "We wish you a Merry Christmas" with our family's name on there. And I do the first cookie, and it's decent, right? So this led me to believe that it was going to be easy. I thought that this would be easier than the pine cones. But I decided to add flour. Flour can't hurt anything. Flour will make nothing stick, right? And the second one turns out horribly. Once again, over on that deleted scene section. So I am quite frustrated. I think I continue the next day, and this is my next attempt. So I struggled to get the cookie out, but at least it is coming out at this point. I have floured the dough, I've floured my parchment paper, I've floured the cookie cutter, I've floured my elbows, I've floured my knees. I have floured everything. And when you see me looking at this cookie cutter and these cookies, I wish you could see my face and the disbelief and frustration that I am in. A part of me wants to just throw this cookie cutter and the entire dough out the window. I feel like it is not Christmas cookie baking unless you lose your religion halfway through the process, but it was thoroughly frustrating. So I try stamping it again, but like barely pressing down in the cookie because I was just like, maybe it's sticking because I'm pressing too hard. But that didn't give me a very good outcome. Here, I'm trying to use gravity to help get this cookie out of this cookie cutter. I'm using centrifugal force. I am breaking out all of the calculus. If I take the circumference of this cookie cutter multiplied by the arc sine tangent of, like, I just, words cannot express how I am looking at this process. Like, there is no way. This is not my first time making cookies, but these are my first time using these cutters and molds, and this was like a 3 day long process when it really should have been a couple of hours. So some of them turned out decent. I ended up baking those up. Here they are drying on the rack. I plated them up, took some pictures, and here we go, moving right along to the deleted scenes of everything that went wrong through this process. So the first one we have here is forgetting to lock my mixer. So my bowl just starts flying all over the place. We were off to a rough start, but I was just like, surely things will improve once we get to this molding process. Look at this. Look at these edges. Look at this. This is like Play-Doh. This is not coming off of this mold at all. And what you don't understand, and what I didn't understand until just this very moment, was that this mold is wooden. So once I scraped this out and washed it, it is wet. I cannot put flour and cookie dough in a wet wooden mold. So I had to give up for the day, put it back in the refrigerator, and start the next day. So here we go with these cookie cutters that were supposed to save me from the mold and all that put me through. And then now my cookies are getting caught up in these little sections of this cookie cutter. And I am just like, no, no way. So they are breaking apart, they are sticking, they are crumbling. When I was able to get them out of the mold, well, out of this cookie cutter, it was really slow going and an agonizing process. But finally, I am done. Thank you guys, and I will see you in the next one for baking that hopefully goes a lot smoother.